Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about ultimate projects. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, I have a question about React. What is in your mind the ultimate project one can undertake in order to learn as much React as possible? In other words, what type of app? Currently, I'm picking projects that I after a while am finding insufficient for getting a holistic understanding of the framework. Thanks in advance. Well, if you want to learn, well, it doesn't matter if it's React, Angular, or Vue, or Ember, uh, Svelte. There are so many at this point, but it doesn't really matter. If it's an SPA framework you're dealing with, then you should try your hand at building an SPA, a single page application. So the the core thing that you should focus on is to build an application that doesn't behave as a normal website where you click a link and then you basically refresh the whole browser page and move to a different URL. You interact with something in an SPA usually without needing to refresh the page. That's the core concept in it, where you basically have something that feels native-like, just as you would expect, say, a mobile app or a desktop app to basically seamlessly just change its interface. Or another example is comment sections. This used to be the big thing when you back in the day, where you had widgets for that sort of stuff, right? Where you had a page, you had a bunch of comments, and then you needed to be able to add something, which was like the number one off at the very least, number one use cases for JavaScript. You want to be able to add a comment without saving and then having to reload the whole page in order to see your comment. You want to just be able to do that quickly and then still keep your page intact, right? That is what an SPA is designed to help you to do these sorts of interaction, input data, fetch data, and so forth without having to refresh the entire page, right? And so an example of such a page is, say, the YouTube video page, like where you might be watching this thing. If you look at that page, you see that you have like side menus and so forth with different videos that you can click on. You have like the My Face or walking video, whatever, on the main section there. You have all these different dials and buttons that you can click on and interact with, or you can navigate to other pages and so forth. All these sorts of interactions are usually fairly complicated, and this is especially if you did this without a framework or some type of SPA library like, say, React, because you need to hold state if you click the different toggles and so forth, and we do these changes on the page without refreshing the whole thing. Because when you say hit the like button or a dislike button or something like that, you notice that it just indicates like the color and the indicator just changes. It doesn't like refresh the whole thing. That's a good example of a project that will teach you everything about React, because in order for you to do that, you're going to have to learn how to do things like, if I link to your page, like if I give you a link, an example, like, do you understand how to do client-side routing, for example, for visual components like React Router or something like that, where if you link to a page, do you actually hold the state? Like, can you link to a specific video and like give it a certain section of the video? Do you have the ability to load new videos as you scroll without having to like fetch all of them at the same time, which is basically pagination and things like that? Do you have state management, so you can, for example, hold all of the comments, the client side, and then add them and then refresh them with new data from the server, things like that. It will touch basically on all the things that you need to be able to do with or most of the stuff that React knows is good at, by just you creating that experience, because it's sophisticatedly advanced enough for you to do that. It doesn't have to be the specific page. I mean, if you go to your, like, I don't have Facebook, so I don't know what it looks like, but if you look at your flows where you can like see all your different, well, I've seen some things about Instagram and so forth, but if you have like a news flow or something like that where you can add comments to posts, like Twitter, for example, like your main page on Twitter, that's also an SPA. That's a perfect project. You have to know how to fetch data from the server, you know how to hold the application state, you know how to update things and submit things without refreshing the page. It's always good to have a little bit of navigation going as well, because navigation is the thing that can trip you up a little bit in some projects, where classic one is that, as I said, you take a link to, or like you're on a page and then you realize that actually, I have all this state that requires the person, like a classic one is their modal. Should you be able to like link to a modal, or should you be able to link to a sub page of your settings, like a tabbing thing where you might be able to tab between segments on a page where you can switch between them, different views. Do you have a link for just the first tab, or do you have a link for both of them, so you can start on whichever if you have multiple tabs in a row, for example. These sorts of state management techniques. All of those things are what an SPA is mostly about, and if you build something like that, which these pages that I talked about, you will basically learn everything you need to know about React, at least the foundation of how it all works, because you're going to have to use most of the hooks. You're going to have to learn about the main libraries to do all that state management. It's not, I mean, and if you add some testing with Jest or something like that into it, you're going to learn basically how to do testing with the framework as well. But I would say that that's a very good project. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you want, and this doesn't just apply to React, it applies to all the SPA frameworks that you can imagine, because fundamentally they all are trying to achieve the same thing. They're doing it in very different ways, so just because you know one doesn't mean that you know everyone, all the other ones. They're very different approaches to the same problem, but making an SPA or a single page application is basically about trying to create a web application that feels like a native application, where switching things doesn't refresh the page or has to reload all the data. It just takes parts, like you can load one segment, like for example you have some videos that are loading while the rest of the page is actually already there because it loads content as it comes in. You can edit information on the page without having to refresh the whole page and basically do state management. It's the same thing with linking. You should be able to link to a certain state of the page. So, and except my favorite, as I said, is when you have tabs where you click the first tab is the default, and then you should have a link so that you can still refresh the page and land on the second tab, because that is the foundation of how these applications work. For inspiration, using things like your favorite social media site, or using the video pages, the content pages on different, like it doesn't have to be YouTube, it can be Udemy, it can be like whatever video streaming service you're looking at, because they're all using this sort of behavior usually on those sorts of pages. Look for basically anything where there's a comment section, and you will likely see some flavor of this. Not forums and stuff like that. Forums are a little bit different, but when there's some dynamic content or content management systems or anything like that, usually you're going to find that that's an SPA of some sort. Have a great day.